Okay, so here's the reality of the situation. And sellers are experiencing this more and more after the pandemic, and buyers are just being less tolerant with salespeople, quite frankly. You spend days, weeks, months even, sending out cold calls, cold emails, LinkedIn outreaches, social media outreaches, and you finally schedule a meeting with the prospect. You finally got them for the meeting, and it's a 1 hour meeting. And you do your preparation, you put together a deck, and you have a plan for how you're going to wow this buyer, this prospect, during that 1 hour conversation. And then all of a sudden you join the call really excited, and all of a sudden the buyer says, well, look, I'm sorry, but we only have 15 minutes for this call. What do? Right? You've prepared for this 1 hour conversation. You're going to take them through a discovery process. You're going to ask amazing questions, but you can't do that in a 15-minute presentation. Well, that was the topic and the subject that Victor Antonio talked about in a recent video, where he actually shares with you some of the best methods for creating a 15-minute presentation. And by the way, I really encourage you to watch Victor Antonio's stuff, because he shares some really practical advice out there to help salespeople be the best that they can be. And I really recommend that you watch it. Here's the problem. There are 3 things missing in that video that, if you don't include them, you're going to have a really hard time converting those buyers into those prospects into potential buyers. And these 3 things are so crucial, and it's based upon neuroscience, based upon sales best practice out there. If you don't include them, it doesn't matter how good a process you add that's Victor Antonio's, you're probably not going to see the results that you are hoping for. That's not to say you won't convert deals, and it's a really good process. But instead of having a 5, maybe 10, maybe 20% conversion rate, you could be missing out on having a 50% conversion rate. And that's why I want you to include those 3 things. So stick around to the end of the video, because at the last one, I'm going to show you something that's really, really unique, something that the best salespeople do out there. And if you put this into your process, you're going to see amazing results. So the first thing that he missed about, and he talks about at the beginning, where you need to share the current state. You need to talk about the current state of the buyer, their company, the situation. And that's good advice, because you don't want to talk about things that are irrelevant to them. Here's the problem. If someone's selling to you and they spend the first 2 minutes just talking about things that you already know, right? What are you going to feel? You're going to feel bored, because this person's telling you things that you live and breathe day in, day out, right? And you're going to be thinking, yeah, that's correct. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, that's correct. When are you going to get to the point? That's what a buyer typically thinks, and that's what you would think if someone was selling to you. So what you need to inject at the very beginning of your conversation is what I call a jolt. A jolt is a state shift in your buyer, because your buyers, there's a research that was done by LinkedIn, and this was this year, where they said that they found that 40% of buyers find that salespeople are untrustworthy. That means just under half of the people that you talk to are already skeptical about what you have to say. So if you end up boring them at the beginning and talking about things that they just kind of understand already and they know really well, you're not going to get their attention towards the end of the presentation, even if you have something amazing to say. So what you want to do at the beginning is jolt them. You want to change their state shift. You want to kind of almost make them think, hang on, what's going on here? And here's how you do that. You want to create a statement, 1 sentence or 2 sentences, where you are giving them a statement that says, I'm telling you something here that you are not aware of. Or I'm telling you something about a result that's going to happen in the short space of time that you are not aware of, and it's going to cause you pain. Or there's an opportunity here that you're missing out on, and if you don't capture that opportunity, again, that's going to cause pain. So let me give you an example. If you're selling to a CTO and they've just invested $5 million in a platform of some kind, or a digital technology of some kind. If you go into the statement, something like this: hey, glad that we're speaking today. Actually, the reason why I wanted to call you is I know that you've invested $5 million in this particular platform in digitalization. And I'm here to tell you that within 12 to 18 months, you're going to find that actually you're going to have to spend another $5 million, just because that platform is going to become irrelevant within the next 12 to 18 months. Now you see how that statement caused you right? If you're a CTO, but even if you're watching this, you'll realize, cause you to think, hang on a second, what happened there? What do you mean? What do you mean the 5 million that I've just spent is actually going to be a waste? Why is that? So what you're creating in them is a sense of curiosity, and you want them to think, tell me more. Now, don't worry, you don't have to create a statement where you're saying that you're wrong or you're doing something that's, you made a bad decision. That's not the idea here. What you're doing is saying to them, look, I have data and I have insights from other CTOs that's actually going to tell you here that you need to actually make a certain change. And even if they disagree with you, don't worry if they disagree with you, because they will still want to hear more. Worry less about them disagreeing with you. Worry more about being able to back up your statement with facts and data points. Because the idea is that you're trying to inject upon them some form of surprise. And that's what the jolt is. Imagine if someone starts a conversation like that with you and you're like, hang on a second, tell me more. Or, I didn't know about that. You're already building such an immense level of trust and credibility in that buyer that they're going to want to hear what you have to say later on. So by all means, talk about the current state, but begin with that jolt statement so that you're creating an emotional shift in your prospect. So that's point number one that Victor Antonio left out or didn't include in his video that you really must use if you're going to create a powerful 15-minute statement, 15-minute presentation, sorry. So the second one is where he talks about the impact. So once you've talked about the current state, then you want to talk about the impact that if you continue down that current state path, here's the losses that you're going to expect, or here's the missed opportunities that you're going to experience. And this is sound advice because the delta, the gap, is where us as sellers fit in. This is where our value is. Because if someone's going down one path, that's going to mean they lose 5 million, well, then that justifies investing £100,000 in your product or service, right? Because now you're going to help them avoid that 5 million. So this is great advice. Here's the problem, and here's something that he missed out in there, is what I call contextual reference. Human beings, right, you and I, we can't assimilate and understand information until we compare it to something that we already know. Our bodies and our minds and our central nervous system are wired towards comparing and contrasting information so that we understand it better. Just think about this: light, dark, hot, cold, good, evil, right? Growth, decline. We can't understand one without understanding the other. And here's the thing about the gap statement, because if you're talking to someone, for example, who's number one in their industry, right? And if you tell them that they're going to lose this much money, well, they might think, well, actually, firstly, I may not believe you. And secondly, I may lose that money, but actually we're still ahead of the game. We're still beating everyone else. So do I really need to change it, or can I wait until later on? I know that sounds illogical, and us as salespeople think that's crazy, but that's how buyers actually feel. And there's a whole other content and video that I have, which I'll publish shortly, around that psychology around why they think like that. But that's how they think. But if you said to them, hey, if you lose that 5 million, your competitors are actually making the right investments right now in digitalization. And that means not only are you going to lose 5 million, but they're going to outperform you in the next 12 months. In fact, you're going to find that their technology is ahead of the game, whereas yours is now lagging. And you're going to have to spend more than just 5 million. You might have to spend 15, 20 million. All of a sudden, what I've just done there is I've given them some sort of comparison, whether it's their competitors, whether it's their industry, or even if it's the world at large. If the world is moving one direction and you're still moving across this direction, well, there's a massive gap, and you're going to find and end up in a lot of pain there. So always compare and contrast. Create a contrast statement. When you say that this is going to have this impact, compare it to something else that they are very familiar with, whether it's a competitor, industry, or the world at large. Make sure that you create that, and make sure that you put a visual representation, because our brains assimilate and translate images 60,000 times faster than words on a page or words that they're hearing. So use a visual representation, because that's going to have some significant impact on your buyer. So remember, create some sort of context, some sort of comparison for your impact statement. And then the final one. Now, this is a really, really good one, and you've stayed with this video because you're intrigued about this one, and you're not going to be disappointed. The last statement that he talks about is, once you've done those things, you've talked about the current state, you've talked about the impact, now you talk about your solution, right? You talk about your product and your service and how that's going to help them solve this problem, right? So that they don't lose $5 million, for example. Here's the problem with that. I've just told you before that 40% of buyers feel that you are untrustworthy. So if you move straight into your solution, what do you think the buyer's thinking? Yeah, they're thinking, well, of course you're going to say that because you're trying to sell me your product, right? So they're cynical, right? And they're skeptical about what you're saying. Now, here's a way around that. And this is what some of the best performers out there in sales do, from selling, £5,000 solutions right the way up to multi-million-pound solutions. And that is, they talk about what I call the decision category. Let me explain this. The core part of any business leader, right, or any executive's job is to make sound decisions. Right? Peter Drucker talks about this a lot in his books. The art and the science of making informed and correct decisions is the biggest part of any business leader's job. And what happens is people think that this is very easy. It's either black or white. You either select option A and that gives you the results, or select option B and that gives you the bad results. But that's actually not the case. Most of the time, when they have to solve a problem, there are about 4 or 5 potential options that they can select from. And each one of them obviously is not going to have the same level of impact, but all of them may not be a bad result. It's just that one might give them a 2% improvement versus another that gives them a 20% improvement. The problem is that they're not always sure which one's which, right? And there's a huge amount of complexity and confusion sometimes, especially if you're doing something new. So what you should do before you talk about your solution is say to them, well, now that we understand the current state and where it's taking you, now that we understand the impact, here are 3 or 4 options that you could be selecting for, right? Here are 3 or 4 decisions for you to make. You can go with option A, which will do this, option B, option C, or option D. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're talking to a head of sales, right? And they say to you, you're talking about the current state, you talk about the fact that their salespeople are not converting, not delivering on results. In fact, their buyers are changing the way that they buy things right now. And it could mean that your salespeople are becoming obsolete. Less and less of the sales process is in your control. And we're seeing this happen with salespeople now anyway. And you have 2 options, right? Now that they've agreed with you, you can say, well, look, there are 2 options here. A lot of companies go down the CRM route, right? And they try to collect more information to inform their sellers so that they're better prepared when they go into meetings. The other route is down to training, right? Even if you give them all the information, without the right level of training, they're not going to be able to use that information in the right way. They're not going to have the impact with the buyer. And a lot of people go down the CRM route. And here is the data to show that actually that's an ineffective route, because as I just said, they give their salespeople so much information, but they don't know what to do with it. In fact, in the meetings, they use it in the wrong way, or they don't even use that information at all. The problem is down to their training. They don't have the right skills, they don't have the right knowledge in order to use that information in the right way and make sure that those deals or those conversations are as powerful as possible. So, and then you ask the buyer, well, would you agree with that data? Do you see how training is more important than CRM? Because you already have a CRM product, but the problem is how they're using the information for that. Yes, actually, I didn't think about it that way, because we've spent so much money actually putting together our CRM platform and getting our salespeople to put all the information, and our marketing people, so that it spits out information that the salesperson can use in the meeting. So we weren't sure what's going on, but yeah, you're right, it could actually be the training. And then you start to say, right, okay, let me tell you about how our training product and service can help you deal with that situation. Now, do you see what I did there? I didn't get them to agree on our product and service at the beginning, although that is the ultimate objective. Of course it is, we're selling. What I got them to agree on was the decision that they need to make, right? The solution to that, right? So they have plenty of options, but I've shown data and insights and information that says, actually, if you choose CRM over training, here are the results. You won't get the results that you think with CRM because your salespeople can't use that information in the right way. Actually, what you really need is training. So what you're doing is you're getting them to agree with the decision that they have to make. And let me tell you, the best salespeople are not the salespeople that are great at discovery and great listeners, and great at knowing their product. I'm not saying that's not important. You have to know those things. The best salespeople are business advisors to their buyers and their prospects. They help them make the right decisions. And that's really, really important here. So before you jump into describing about your solution and what you're offering and why it's great, and I'm sure it is great, get them to agree with you on the decision that they need to make. And of course, you're going to lead them down a decision that you can actually solve. There's no point if you sell a training product and you say to them that CRM is the best option, but you can't solve that for them. So get them to agree on the business decision that they have to make first. Then you say, well, look, now that we agree that training is the right thing, let me explain to you why our program is the best solution for that decision that you've just made. Right? So this is really, really important, because if you don't put these 3 things in your 15-minute presentation, you're going to find that 15-minute presentation is good, but it may not be enough to get the buyer to agree to the next step, whether that's a sale or whether that's the next conversation or a product demonstration, whatever it might be. Right? So those are the 3 things that Victor Antonio missed in his presentation. Like I said, I love his stuff, but if you put these 3 things in there, you're going to find that 15-minute presentation is amazing. Right? So just to recap on what those 3 things are. Number 1, make sure you have a Jolt statement, right? 1 or 2 sentences that will shake their world, something that they didn't know was happening, right? Something they didn't appreciate was going to happen, something that they haven't figured out yet, right? So make sure you put that statement in very first, so that they are open to wanting to hear more from you. They're curious, they're focused on what you have to say. Number 2, when you do the impact statement, make sure you are comparing or contrasting it to something else that they are very familiar with, whether it's their industry, their competitors, or the world at large. Make sure that you do that so that their brain can actually assimilate and calculate and understand what it is that you're saying. And then the final one is, don't go into your solution straight away. Help them make the right business decisions and use data and facts to show that option A is better than option B. Get them to agree that option A is the right decision to make. Then at the end, talk about your solution, your product, your service. So I hope that's been helpful. And look, as always, subscribe, share your comments, right? I really want to hear what you have to say about this and whether you found this useful or not. But the other thing I want you to do is, we all have colleagues, we all have managers, peers, people in our team. And if you feel that they would benefit from hearing what I've just shared, then share this video with them, right? Let's get as many people using this information as possible, because we want to help as many salespeople become successful. So I hope you liked this video. I hope this has been helpful, and I'll see you on the next video. Do like, share, and subscribe.